Skylar, good morning to you. This is quite a surprise.
Certainly is, Gail. Good morning to you. The substance, which is believed to be cocaine, was found Sunday evening in a routine check by the Secret Service, sparking a precautionary closure of the White House complex altogether. D.C. Fire was called to investigate and quickly determined the item to be non-hazardous and performed preliminary field tests, which tested positive for cocaine. The president and his family were not home at the time, having left for Camp David on Friday and came back here to the White House yesterday. According to two law enforcement officials, the bag of powder was found in a work area of the West Wing that could have been accessible to many people, including staff or visitors, even tourists.
Well, it's July, but it's snowing in D.C. They got some white powder substance they found in the White House, and of course, the speculation and wonders are flying. I mean, for me too, cocaine in the White House? Man, what kind of staff meetings are these going on? It was not in that area though, as you saw from the back end. This is another aspect that actually isn't being prominently reported, at least from things that I've seen, but you get little tidbits here and there. This is what Reuters pointed out as far as this story goes. Cocaine found at the White House was in a cubbyhole for visitors. They did point out there in that news report that we started with that President Biden wasn't there at the time. So who else could it be in these visitors' cubbyholes? You know what people are thinking, but a little bit more from that one headline because this is what Reuters wrote. Cocaine discovered in the White House on Sunday was found in a cubbyhole in the West Wing entry where visitors place electronics and other belongings before taking tours. That's what a source familiar with the matter said. Also, administration officials are able to offer tours of parts of the West Wing, which houses the Oval Office, to friends and family members. People who are not members of staff must leave their electronics and those belongings in these storage cubicles before they take that tour. And the source then pointed out that the cocaine that was found was actually in one of those cubbies. So somebody's friend, their buddy, guest, a family member rolled in and said, oh, yeah, I gotta put my phone down, my Coke, and my smile. A little bit. Initial thoughts, because there's more to this. There's more people who've taken.
That was my initial thought. Was just like, who is just like going to the White House for a tour? Is like, oh, let me just like empty my pockets. Like, oh, I'll just leave this in the cubby. But okay, when I first saw this headline, my first thought was just like, is there not usually cocaine in the West Wing? And like, I get that there's like a biohazard threat for like white powder in the West Wing, but I guess I was just under the impression that everyone who works in these very high power, high stress jobs, they're all probably on cocaine. And as far as I know, that's not true, so don't quote me on that. But I did have to check my own preconceived notions about what people do in Washington, D.C.
Maybe down there in Texas, people get stressed out and get to doing cocaine. But here in Los Angeles, nobody does that stuff. So I want you to make sure you keep it regional.
I heard it's a very clean city in LA. Yeah.
It never snows here. But by the way, there were people who were thinking what I'm sure many folks were thinking. The Biden White House, cocaine. Yes, this is where it went next.
Hunter Biden joining the first family on the White House balcony for the 4th of July fireworks show as Secret Service agents investigate suspected cocaine that was found in the West Wing. Mark Meredith, he joins us now from the White House. Mark.
Kaylee, Stephen, Griff, good morning to all three of you. President Biden and his family came back to the White House from Camp David to enjoy the 4th of July festivities last night. It was a picture-perfect night here in the nation's capital. But this morning, there are more questions about who's coming in and out of the White House after cocaine was found in the West Wing. Now, the president nor his staff talked about this last night during the celebration. Cameras spotted the first family, including the first lady and first son Hunter Biden, there in attendance. But it appears these drugs were discovered on Sunday while the president was away.
So which one are you going to believe? The pictures and images that they're putting up there, or the facts that the Bidens weren't there, Hunter wasn't there, and also was found in cubbyholes where visitors and folks who aren't the president's son stash their things? But still, I mean, as you heard from the beginning of that report from Kaylee McEnany, Hunter Biden was at the White House with the family while cocaine was found. Is that what's happening? Or maybe also the pictures of him hanging out on the balcony while you're talking about? Is that what was actually happening yet?
It's very misleading. It's crazy. Like, they just took two stories that are technically unrelated and they presented them together in an effort to spin up some drama and to create the narrative that they were trying to create. I really hope that Hunter Biden, with all the scrutiny that he is already under, would not walk into the White House with cocaine on him. And I have to believe that he's smarter than to do something like that. But Like, it's just the way that you present a story, really, the way that you can spin anything so easily just by conflating two things that aren't actually related to one another. You can really just, create whatever narrative and ideas that you want to.
That's the sneaky way to do it.
It's very sneaky.
The way that Daryl Issa does it is to just say it. Watch.
You gotta just say it. And the facts are there, like what we know of the facts and who was in the White House and who wasn't, but they don't tell their audience those things.
Let's jump to Daryl Issa. I think he was a little bit more direct about his assumptions.
Huge difference when, in fact, all the president and then before that vice president had to do was make it appear as though he was behind his son. He has done that before. He did it yesterday. He continues to have somebody with a history of drug addiction in the White House. And it is not a small problem that we find cocaine after Hunter Biden's been in the White House, and people roll their eyes and say, we never had this before. What's changed?
Yeah, Congressman Daryl Issa, thank you, sir.
What has changed, and why is that a link directly to this? It's perfect enough that they can say, oh yeah, you know how we've been completely over analyzing Hunter Biden and his drug addictions, because that's something that we should clown people for. It's not actually a problem that persists amongst many people in the country. Let's just throw it on him as if he's the one person who suffered from these things, and it's based completely off of him wanting to thumb his nose at the American people. Well, he had those issues before his dad was president, but let's just forget all that and mash it all together. For the sake of more electoral politics. So makes you wonder if they actually have any policy that they're looking to push on you. But then again, sometimes people may wonder, maybe the White House should have said something about this. Well, they did. Let's jump down to this last video here, you guys, because the press secretary was talking about it. And some people wonder, why don't they just say these facts that'll easily debunk the things that people are assuming because of entities like Fox News? Let's watch this one.
Could you just clarify for us where exactly inside the West Wing the substance was discovered?
I'm not going to get into specifics. All I can say is when people visit the West Wing, there is the area of the West Wing where it is highly traveled, and that is what happens. People come through this particular area; it's highly traveled. I'm just not going to get into specifics. I'm not going to get into, not going to get ahead of the Secret Service, and so I'll let them speak to that.
Maybe you don't want to get ahead of these things, I understand that, but also when you know the narrative that's going to be pushed, maybe you don't want to talk about the specifics, because it maybe look bad enough that already there was some guest, apparently, that dropped off some cocaine in a cubbyhole, and that's damaging enough. But to then allow that same thought process of, well, you know what we always say about the president's son, that must be some kind of undercover thing happening. If you don't think these things will be in primary ads or even our general election ads from Republicans, whoever happens to win, against Biden, and they'll make it seem like this is just an established fact, you're fooling yourself. This is set up perfectly for the lie that they'll continue to push. They have no problem with that any other time. Let's keep it real.
Yeah, and the way that she presented, or the way that she was responding to the reporter, she made it sound like it was a lot more nefarious than from what we know than what it was. And it's so true what you were talking about when you were saying that, this is going to be used in campaign ads. This is a talking point for a party that doesn't have a platform to run on. That's important to remember. If they aren't talking about issues, they're talking about things like this. They're making up stories wherever they can. They're looking for those opportunities. And whenever they find those opportunities, they are blowing them way out of proportion. They're milking them to death. And that's exactly what we're going to see here. And of course, it's ironic because going back to my preconceived notions, this was not the first time that there was cocaine in the White House. Like there's no way that. Don't quote me on that, but you can't convince me that this is the first time that cocaine was in the White House.
Yeah, well, it's the White House.